Dear friends, thank you very much for joining us at another great event of the Holocaust Studies program at Western Galilee College, headed by Dr. Boaz Cohen. This is our 7th event, and we are thrilled to have such a positive response from young and senior scholars from around the world. It seems like the COVID-19, with all the tragedy, actually opened to us also new horizons. This event will be in a different format, a networking, friendly, informal event. And I will give Dr. Roni Mikel Arieli the honor of presenting it to you later on. I would also like to thank Jan Bujlaf for joining the team and helping organize this event. But now, we are honored to have with us today Dr. Christine Schmidt, Deputy Director and Head of Research at the Wiener Library for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide in London. Dr. Schmidt earned her PhD in History in Holocaust and Genocide Studies from Clark University. She also graduated in Museum Studies at the George Washington University in DC. She was granted a Fulbright postdoc fellowship and has worked for the US Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington and for the Jewish Foundation for the Righteous. Her research focuses on Jewish life in hiding during the Holocaust, resistance, collaboration, and the Nazi camp system. Among her publications are tracing and documenting Nazi victims, past and present, those left behind, and We Are All Witnesses, Eva Reichman and the Wiener Library's Eyewitnesses Account Collection. Christine, we are grateful for your willingness to open this important event. You will speak about the most relevant and actual topic to all of us, staying connected, research together in challenging times. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Daniela. That was a really kind and rather unexpected introduction. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for joining. It's really great to see so many familiar faces and, of course, people I don't know, so it's a wonderful occasion to be able to come together. Of course, I'd like to first start off by thanking Boaz, Daniela, Ronnie, and the team for inviting me to say the opening remarks at this event. First, let me just have a show of hands. Everybody can hear me, okay? Because that's one of the challenges, just to make sure. Great, fantastic. I'm delighted to be able to mark this occasion with just a few reflections on conducting our research work in these difficult times, which I know has been challenging for a variety of reasons. I've been taking part in some of the events that Boaz and his colleagues have organized at Western Galilee College, and it's been great to see how dynamic and responsive they've been during this crisis, creating a space for the exchange of new research and also involving scholars at all stages in their careers who may not necessarily have the opportunity to interact as easily with each other otherwise. I think it's safe to say that academic research, perhaps especially in the humanities at the best of times, can be a lonely process. So I think it's important that we create as many opportunities for exchange like this as possible. And as we know, of course, traditionally conferences, workshops, and symposia have all served as a way for scholars to get together and to share formal and informal feedback on their work. And I think what has been challenging about replacing these in-person events into the online environment is fostering the real-time informal part of these. And so it's wonderful to see colleagues at Western Galilee College creating this opportunity to facilitate some of these connections that might be lost if we didn't make a concerted effort to facilitate them or host them. And of course, being invited to kick off this event has also led me to reflect on my own experiences of trying to continue my own research, which in some respects has been a bit futile during this period for a variety of reasons, but I think more relevant, the work of the Wiener Holocaust Library in London, which I thought would be kind of an appropriate way to frame my remarks to kick this off. For those of you who don't know who we are or what we do, the Wiener Holocaust Library was founded by our namesake Alfred Wiener, who was a German Jewish intellectual who began to collect and disseminate information about the rise of the Nazis as it was happening and as they were gaining more influence in Nazi Germany. The Jewish Central Information Office was the precursor to the Wiener Library and was actively collecting publications and recorded eyewitness accounts, for example, of Kristallnacht or the November pogrom, as these events were unfolding. And the work of Alfred Wiener and his colleagues form the foundations of our collection, which we've continued to grow and make more accessible to this day. And we host events such as book launches and seminars for PhD researchers, some of whom I see actually on this call, which is great to see, and temporary exhibitions. We also host the Frankel Prize competition for new research on the Holocaust, and we work with partners across the sector, from higher education institutions, schools, charities, and so on, to ensure that our collections are made as accessible as possible and to support new research on the Holocaust. We're also an active member of the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, or affectionately known as ERI for short. And this will actually be kicking off in the next phase next month, and also continuing to work on creating a permanent structure for this network. And within this whole framework, we've also offered fellowships to dozens of ERI fellows to be in temporary residence at the library, and we're hoping to expand our fellowship offering in the near future. So it's good to stay in touch with us for that opportunity. So working in all of these areas gives me a somewhat unique perspective on connections in research and how these can be carried on during these challenging times. And I had, sort of thinking about this, I realized that many of our activities at the library have largely been based on the reality that we are a London-based charity with a good international reputation, and with significant parts of our collection that is digitized, but not everything. We still rely a lot on footfall in our reading room and exhibition space to ensure that people use our materials for research and for educational purposes, but also to acquire new material donations from families who want to leave their documents somewhere as a legacy. And our focus has largely been on how to get more people in the door to learn about our collections, but of course we are making more of our materials available digitally. And in short, our collections can and do serve to bring people together, academics at different stages in their career, educators, and the interested public who come to learn more about the Holocaust. But of course, like everyone else, everywhere else, the conditions this year have forced a rethink and a regroup. We closed our doors to the public earlier this year for the first time since 2011, when we moved our premises across town in London. And this is the first time in our very long history that we've been closed to the public due to a public health crisis. And as a charity, like everyone else, we faced some difficult choices. For example, some of our staff have been furloughed, and our usual offering had to go quiet temporarily and to adapt. And as an institution that fosters relationships and brings together people who engage in Holocaust and genocide studies research and education and commemoration from a variety of different angles, this has been a particularly challenging aspect for us to confront. And I don't want to make statements, sort of verging on the trite about making lemonade out of lemons, because we are in the midst of a serious health crisis, not to mention the political, economic, social, and environmental crises that are impacting our world, let alone our research more generally. And I think we can all agree that this is a very difficult time for many reasons. At the library, we've managed to get back up and running, partially, albeit a bit differently from when we closed our doors to the public earlier this year. And we've discovered new ways to engage with people more directly than we might have by hosting only in-person events and exhibitions. And these events have a legacy like those hosted by Blaise and his colleagues. They all live online, so they're there for future engagement. These have also led to connections among PhD students around the world. For example, we hosted a really interesting online archival discovery workshop a few weeks ago in partnership with Royal Holloway, University of London. And we've been bringing authors in conversation with each other too, in ways that are not as easy to do face-to-face with the usual budget and time constraints that everybody has. And finally, our family researchers have also fostered reunions across generations and brought people together who didn't realize they were researching the same person who was impacted by the events of the Holocaust. And this is something that, while happening virtually, we think carries great significance and personal meaning to everyone involved in that research. So we're still learning ways to foster interactivity and connection with researchers too. So it's really great to be involved in this event. But I just have to say that we couldn't foster our virtual research communities without significant work of all of the librarians, archivists, and digital humanists who are working hard at the library and many other institutions in our space to make collections accessible for research through digitization and dissemination. And this is one of the challenges that I know many researchers are still struggling with, because access to archives and ability and funds to travel are all bound up with each other. So I just want to close then with a few takeaways that I've gathered from thinking about our experiences at the library so far. We've had to rethink our geographic boundaries and how we reach out to people beyond London and the UK, and participating in this event is one great example of that. So I think in consideration going forward, it's useful to think broadly about the ways to connect across borders, breaking through language barriers and accessibility issues, perhaps even paving the way for richer, more purposeful in-person meetings later on. Secondly, virtual events have allowed maybe a new focus on expanding audiences and bringing together researchers at different stages in their career. And this is something I know that's valued by Boaz and his colleagues, and thinking about developing events like this. And I hope that these mentoring and partnerships that maybe develop out of these events can continue to develop thereafter. And finally, our experience at the library has led us to be more purposeful and focused with our public and academic outreach, but at the same time, events like this remind us that no matter how much purpose you're putting into it, it's good to leave space for the serendipity, which is usually something that seems to happen, at the coffee breaks or in the hallways of book talks and conferences and the like, those connections you didn't realize you didn't have. So since we're gathered for what is essentially a massive virtual coffee break, I'd like to close by wishing everyone a highly engaged and successful dialogue, and that the chance to share your work informally offers new and long-lasting connections, both virtually and in reality. And with that, just want to thank everyone for joining and for listening, and I wish you a good exchange.